So we have a two-way frequency table here. Notice the column is talking about people who use Twitter and people who don't use Twitter. It told us a social media expert is trying to collect data on if people use Facebook or Twitter, and below are his findings. So this column represents people who use Twitter, people who don't use Twitter, and then the rows, this row represents the people who said yes, they use Facebook, and these are no, they don't use Facebook. Remember the 65? That represents the total number of people that were surveyed. So what do we know about these 30 people right here? These 30 people, we know they use Twitter, and we also know they use Facebook. So those 30 people use Twitter, they also use Facebook. Now let's look at the problems that we're given here. It says to write these answers as fractions. So on 1, it says what is the frequency of people who use Twitter? Now remember, we're going to see the term frequency and we're going to see the term relative frequency. When we see frequency, that's just the same as saying the number. So we could say what is the number of people who use Twitter. So people who use Twitter, I need to find that information. Right here is where it says people who use Twitter. So this is a column. This column represents the people who use Twitter. It says, it doesn't say talk about Facebook or not Facebook, it's all the people who use Twitter. So we would go down and find the total. The total people who use Twitter is 39. And if it said write it as a fraction, you could write it 39 over 1. 39 as a whole number is fine also. Look at 2. It says of the people who don't use Facebook, what is the relative frequency that people don't use Twitter? Now we see the term relative frequency. When we see relative frequency, that means we need to think about a fraction. It's a comparison or a ratio of two numbers. This is our clue right here, of. When we need to find the relative frequency, look for the word of or the same as of. That will tell us what the total is. That tells us what the denominator is. So this part right here, of the people who don't use Facebook, that tells us what the denominator of our fraction is going to be. So let's erase this. So of the people who don't use Facebook, we need to know the people that don't use Facebook. That's right here. Don't use Facebook. I need to know the total of those people. So I go across to the total, and I see that the total who don't use Facebook is 29. So I know the denominator for this fraction is going to be 29. So we want to know, out of these 29 people, how many of them also don't use Twitter? So out of these 29 people who don't use Facebook, now I need to look at the 20 or the 9 and decide which one of those is the correct number. It says don't use Twitter. Doesn't use Twitter is right here. So that would represent the 20. So 20 over 29 is your answer for number 2. On 3, among the people who use Twitter, what is the relative frequency? So right there, that tells me I need to be thinking fraction, that they use Facebook. I don't see the word of. Among is another word that means of. So if I see the word among, that's similar to talking about of. So of the people who use Twitter, so I need to know, use Twitter, what's the total number of people who use Twitter? It's 39. So we know the denominator for this fraction is going to be 39. Now go to the rest of the problem. What is the relative frequency that they use Facebook? So now we're looking for, of these people who use Twitter, how many of them also use Facebook? So it's either 30 or it's either 39. We're looking for use Facebook. That's right here. So 30 people out of the 39 use a Facebook also. Look at 4. What's 4 asking us? 4 says, what's the probability of Facebook users also using Twitter? Now probability, when we see the word probability, that should make us think relative frequency. So remember, when you've worked with probability, probability can always be written as a fraction. So that's just another way of talking about relative frequency. So of, you see the word of, Facebook users. So that means we want to know, of all of the Facebook users, how many also use Twitter. So we first need to find our denominator of Facebook users. Facebook is right here. Go across and we see that the total is 36. And of those 36, we want to know how many of them use Twitter. Uses Twitter is right here. That's 30. So 30 over 36 is our fraction. We can simplify that, dividing both by 6, and we get 5/6. There's our answer for that. On the next one, you had to complete the table with the information that you're given. So when you have tables like this to complete, just make sure and read the information carefully, and it will start to give you clues on what squares you can fill in. What are we told right here? A total of 14 people were in a survey. Remember, the total number of people in a survey for these tables is always represented by this box right here. So we know 14 has to go right here, because this number right here represents the total of everything for our two-way table. Well, now it says the surveyor asked if they know another language. Of the 14 people, 2 males know another language. So where can we put that 2? We know that they are male, and they know another language. So I can go to the male, say, all right, I know it's either going to be here, here, or here. But remember, these 2 people know another language, so I need to pay attention to another language. Another language is right here, so if I put a 2 right here, that means they are male, and they also know another language. That's where that 2 goes. Alright, now look at the next part. It says 8 people only speak one language. Only one language is right here. It doesn't talk about male or female, it just says 8 people, so that's a total of 8 people. So the number of people who speak one language is 8. That needs to be our total. So the 8 people who only speak one language, that 8 goes right here. What else do we know? 7 females were involved in the survey. So we know we need to put a 7 somewhere on this row right here. It doesn't say 7 females spoke another language, 7 females spoke only, it just says 7 were involved in the survey, so 7 would go right there. Well, now that we have these numbers, it's just like a puzzle. You should be able to fill in the rest of these boxes or cells. So looking at this number right here, this 14 represents the total of this box and this box. So if this is 7, this has to be 7, because 7 plus 7 is 14. Right? Looking across the row, this number plus this number equals 14. So if this is 8, you could think 14 minus 8 to get 6, because 6 plus 8 is 14. Now that gives us a clue here. This is our total who speak another language. So if 2 are male, 2 plus 4 equals 6. Now, look at the row here for the males. 2 males speak another language. The total number of males is 7, so 7 minus 2, or you can think 2 plus 5 equals 7. And then for the females, 4 plus 3 equals 7, or you could have done 5 plus 3 equals 8. Now you've completed your two-way table and you're ready to answer the questions. So in 5 it says, what is the frequency of males who know only one language? We see the word frequency. That's the same as number. So I'm thinking, I don't need a fraction, I just need one number. What is the number of males who know only one language? So I know I need to look for the males. So the males are right here. So it's either going to be 2 or 5 or 7. Only one language would be right here. So our number's 5. Look at the next one. It says, of the people who were surveyed, what is the relative frequency? So that's our clue right there telling us we want a fraction. That they are female who knows another language. Write your answer as a decimal to the nearest tenth. So, of the people who were surveyed, of all of the people who were surveyed, the word of, that's our clue for our denominator. So we need to look at our table. How many people were surveyed? The total number of people who were surveyed is the 14. So we know 14 is our denominator. Let's put these numbers back. That was 5. That was 3. Now look at the rest of the problem or the question. We're looking for, of all of these people surveyed, how many of them are a female who knows another language? So we need to find the females. The females, it's either going to be 4, 3, or 7, but we need only the females who know another language. So of these females, those 4 know another language. So 4 over 14 would be the fraction. That simplifies to 2 over 7. It said write it as a decimal rounded to the nearest tenth. So that would be, I could think of that as 2 divided by 7. And 2 divided by 7 is, let's check that on the calculator quickly. 2 divided by 7 is 0.285, 0.285, what was the next digit? It doesn't matter. 7. So it said round to the nearest tenth. So all we have to do is look at the 2 right here. The 8 tells us to round up. So this 0.2 is going to become, is it 0.3? So 3/10 would be your answer. On 7, among the people surveyed, what's the relative frequency? So we know, it's again, it's going to be a fraction because it says relative frequency. Among means of. So there's our clue for the denominator. Among the people surveyed, or of the people surveyed. That's again the total of 14. So we know 14 is going to be the denominator. Now, what is the relative frequency that the person is a female? The person is a female. So of these people surveyed, how many of them were a female? We look right here. a total of 7 were female. It didn't talk about speaking only one language or speaking another language. It just said of the people surveyed, how many were female. So 7 over 14 would be your fraction. That's 1/2. You probably know that 1/2 is 50%. Told you to write it as a percent. And the last one, on the last one, let's see what it says. Of all the females, what's the relative frequency that they know another language? Relative frequency means it's going to be a fraction. The word of is our clue for our denominator, of all the females. So we need the total number of females. The total number of females is 7. Of those 7 females, how many know another language? Go across. Of these 7 females, the number who know another language is 4. Write your answer as a fraction. There's your answer.